The morning was quiet in the small town of Elysia, a peaceful place surrounded by tall trees and soft hills. The air smelled of pine, and the sound of birds filled the early sunlight. Ethan, a young engineer in his mid-20s, walked along a dirt path that led to the edge of the forest. He often came here on weekends to clear his mind. His work at the factory was tiring, and nature was the only place where he felt calm. He carried a small bag with tools, some food, and an old sketchbook. Ethan liked to repair broken machines, and sometimes he repaired old things he found in the forest. Strange metal pieces, forgotten drones, or things that looked like they came from another time. But that morning, something different waited for him among the trees. As he walked deeper into the woods, he heard a strange sound. It wasn't the cry of a bird or the rustle of leaves. It was soft, like a voice. He stopped, listening carefully. "Is someone there?" he called gently. No answer came, only the wind. He stepped forward, pushing some branches aside. And then, he saw her. A young girl was sitting on the ground near a stream, her knees drawn close to her chest. Her long hair shone like gold touched by sunlight, and around her head 2 furry fox-like ears twitched slightly. A single tail, orange with a white tip, curled around her legs. Her clothes were torn and old, and her feet were bare. Ethan froze. For a moment, he thought he must be dreaming. A fox girl? That was impossible. He had heard old stories about spirits in the woods, but he never believed them. Yet the girl looked so real, frightened, trembling, and lost. He took a slow step forward. "Hey," he said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "Are you okay? You're hurt?" The girl looked up quickly. Her amber-colored eyes were wide, full of confusion and fear. She said something, but it was not English. It sounded musical but broken, like an old forgotten language. Ethan didn't understand. "I'm sorry. I don't know what you're saying." The girl tried again, this time mixing a few human words. "No hurt, please." Her voice was quiet, soft as falling snow. Ethan nodded quickly. "It's okay. I won't hurt you. I promise." He slowly took out a small bottle of water from his bag and placed it on the ground, sliding it toward her. "Here. You must be thirsty." She looked at the bottle with suspicion, then sniffed it like a small animal. Finally, she took it and drank carefully. Her hands were trembling, and Ethan noticed scratches on her arms. After a moment, she whispered, "Thank you." Ethan smiled a little. "You can speak English?" She tilted her head, trying to understand. "Little," she said softly. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, and for the first time, Ethan could see her clearly. Her ears flicked whenever there was a sound, and her tail twitched nervously. There was something innocent about her, like a child seeing the world for the first time. Ethan wanted to ask her many questions: who she was, where she came from, why she was here. But she looked exhausted. Her eyes were dull with hunger and fear. "Come on," he said gently. "My home is not far. You can rest there. I'll get you something to eat." She hesitated, stepping back. "No. Humans." Her voice cracked. Ethan's heart softened. He didn't know what had happened to her, but the way she said that word, humans, was full of pain. "I'm not like those humans, maybe," he said quietly. "I just want to help." She studied his face for a long moment, as if searching for truth. Then she nodded slowly. The walk back to town was quiet. She followed him from a short distance, still cautious. Every sound made her flinch: the rustling leaves, the chirping birds, even the crunch of their own footsteps. Ethan tried to make her feel safe. He talked softly about the trees, the town, and the sky, even though he wasn't sure if she understood. Finally, they reached his small wooden house on the edge of Elysia. It was simple: 1 floor, a small workshop beside it, and a cozy garden filled with wildflowers. Ethan opened the door and motioned for her to come in. She stepped in slowly, eyes wide as she looked around. Everything seemed new to her: the lights, the chairs, even the ticking clock on the wall. Ethan handed her a towel. "You're wet from the stream. You can dry yourself." She took it carefully, studying it like it was some kind of strange treasure. Then she rubbed her face awkwardly, trying to copy what he did. "Do you have a name?" he asked. She thought for a moment, then pointed to herself. "Aria," she said softly. "I am Aria." Ethan smiled. "Aria, that's a beautiful name." Her ears twitched slightly as if she didn't understand the compliment but felt its kindness. He went to the kitchen and brought some bread, fruit, and milk. Aria sniffed everything before tasting it. When she ate, she did it quickly, like someone who hadn't eaten in days. Ethan turned away to give her privacy, pretending to tidy the room. After eating, she looked at him again and said quietly, "You help Aria. Why?" Ethan shrugged, sitting across from her. "Because you needed it. Isn't that reason enough?" She blinked. "Most humans know help. Humans fear." "Maybe," Ethan said, smiling softly. "But maybe not all humans are the same." Aria looked down, thinking deeply. For a while there was silence, only the ticking clock and the faint sound of wind outside. Then slowly she smiled, a small, shy smile that lit her face like sunlight through clouds. That night Ethan gave her a blanket and let her sleep on the couch. He watched her from the workshop, unable to stop wondering who she really was. She looked human, but the ears and tail were too real to be fake. Maybe she was part of an ancient species, or maybe something new entirely. He sighed and looked out the window. The moonlight shone through the forest, silver and calm. He thought about how strange life was. Yesterday his biggest problem was a broken engine at work. Today a fox girl was sleeping on his couch. Before going to bed he saw Aria still awake, staring at the ceiling. "Can't sleep?" he asked quietly. She turned her head toward him. "Too quiet. Forest talk, here. No talk." Ethan smiled. "You mean it's too peaceful?" She nodded slightly. "Yes, peaceful." She said the word slowly, like she was tasting it for the first time. "Don't worry," Ethan said. "You're safe here." She looked at him again, her golden eyes softening. "Thank you, Ethan." It was the first time she said his name. Somehow, hearing it from her felt special. The next morning, sunlight filled the small home. Ethan woke early, and when he entered the living room, Aria was sitting on the floor trying to fold the blanket neatly. Her tail swished every time she made a mistake. He couldn't help but smile. "You don't have to do that, it's okay." Aria looked up. "I want help." Her voice was soft, almost shy. Ethan nodded, letting her continue. She seemed happy doing something normal, even if she didn't understand everything. When he made breakfast, she watched his every move, how he cracked eggs, turned on the stove, poured coffee. She repeated small actions, trying to learn. "Humans. Many rules," she murmured, frowning as she held a spoon upside down. Ethan laughed lightly. "Yeah, maybe too many." After breakfast, he gave her an old shirt and trousers to wear. They were too big for her, but she smiled and said, "Warm. I like." "Good," Ethan said. "You can stay here until we figure things out." Aria tilted her head. "Figure? What?" "Where you came from. Why you were alone in the forest. Maybe someone's looking for you." At those words, her face changed, her ears lowered, and she turned away. "No. No one." Ethan felt a pang in his chest but didn't push her. "All right," he said gently. "We'll take one day at a time." That day, as Ethan worked in his small workshop fixing an old radio, Aria sat by the window watching birds outside. Occasionally, she tried to copy their whistles. When she managed a sound close enough, she giggled quietly. It was the first time Ethan heard her laugh, light and full of wonder. He looked at her from his desk and smiled. She really was like a child discovering the world again. In the afternoon, she pointed at the sky. "Why clouds move?" Ethan put down his tools. Because of the wind, the air moves them. She nodded thoughtfully. Wind strong, but we no see it. That's right, Ethan said. We can't see everything, but we can feel it. Arya turned to him with a bright smile. Like kind things? Ethan blinked. What do you mean? When someone kind, she said slowly, touching her chest. We no see kindness, but we feel. Ethan didn't know what to say for a moment. He simply nodded. Yeah, just like that. That evening, Arya helped him water the plants. She spilled more water than she poured, laughing every time. As the sun set, she sat beside him on the steps of the porch, staring at the sky turning orange. She whispered, Ethan. Sky big. I feel small. He chuckled. We all do sometimes, but being small doesn't mean we're not important. Arya looked at him, her eyes reflecting the fading light. You strange human, she said softly. But, good strange. Ethan laughed quietly. I'll take that as a compliment. The wind blew gently, carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt something peaceful inside, like he wasn't alone anymore. And Arya, sitting beside him, felt something she had never known before. Safety. In that quiet golden hour, two different worlds met. One human, one not, yet both learning what it meant to be alive, together. The days after Arya's arrival were full of quiet moments and new discoveries. Ethan didn't mind the slow pace. In fact, he found peace in it. For someone used to the noise of machines and factories, this calmness felt like a breath of fresh air. But more than that, he enjoyed watching Arya learn about the world around her piece by piece. She was still shy, still uncertain of so many things. She would often follow him around the house, watching him closely. It was like she was studying him, trying to figure out how humans moved, talked, and thought. Arya's first lesson in human behavior came early one morning when Ethan handed her a bowl of cereal. He had already poured the milk and placed a spoon beside it, but she seemed puzzled by the arrangement. What's this? She asked, staring down at the bowl as though it was an object from another world. Ethan chuckled. It's breakfast. You eat it with the spoon. Arya poked the spoon with one finger, then turned it over, confused. Eat spoon? She shook her head, clearly unsure how to hold it. Ethan smiled and gently placed the spoon in her hand. Like this. You hold it like a pencil. She copied his movement, holding the spoon awkwardly between her fingers. But when she tried to scoop some cereal, the spoon slipped and she ended up spilling the milk everywhere. Oh, she exclaimed, her tail flicking nervously behind her. She jumped back, eyes wide in embarrassment. It's okay, Ethan said quickly, grabbing a towel to clean up. It happens. You'll get the hang of it. She looked at him, eyes uncertain. Humans. Always do this? Ethan nodded. Sometimes we spill things. But that's how we learn. Mistakes are just part of it. Arya thought about this for a moment, her tail still swishing. Then she tried again, this time holding the spoon more carefully. With a small smile, she managed to scoop some cereal and bring it to her mouth. The first bite was a little awkward, and she made a face. Weird, but okay, Ethan laughed. That's the spirit. You're getting it. The next lesson came a few days later when Ethan showed Arya how to wash clothes. He had a small laundry setup by the back door, and she watched him with wide eyes as he tossed the clothes into a machine and turned the dial. She raised an eyebrow. You put clothes in that? Ethan nodded. Yep, that's the washing machine. It makes cleaning clothes easy. Arya, still unsure, reached for a shirt, holding it up with both hands. I wash with hands, she said slowly, trying to remember something from her past. Well, Ethan said, smiling, we can do it the old way if you like. But this is much faster. Arya seemed unsure but agreed to try. Ethan showed her how to pour in the soap and press the buttons. As the machine started, she jumped back, startled by the noise. That's the sound of cleaning, Ethan said, grinning. It's not so bad once you get used to it. Arya looked at the spinning clothes in awe, but after a few moments, her tail twitched with nervous energy. It makes noise. Is it okay? Ethan nodded, sensing her concern. It's fine. Don't worry. It's just working. She seemed satisfied for the moment but stayed close by, watching the machine as if it might explode at any second. Later that day, Ethan took her outside to show her the garden. He handed her a watering can. "Here, you can water the plants. It's simple." She took the can, examining it as though it were an alien object. She bent down to water the flowers, but instead of gently pouring the water, she tipped the can too quickly, spilling it all over the ground. Ethan couldn't help but laugh. "It's okay. Just a little slower. Like this." He showed her how to gently tip the can, letting the water flow steadily. Arya nodded, then tried again. This time the water flowed onto the flowers instead of the ground. She smiled proudly, her tail swaying behind her. "Good job," Ethan said, proud of her progress. Arya beamed. "I do good?" she asked, her voice full of happiness. "Yes, you're doing great," Ethan replied. As the days went on, Arya's understanding of human behavior grew, but so did her confusion. There were moments when she simply couldn't figure out the little things, the things that seemed so natural to humans. One afternoon, she tried to mimic Ethan's movements while they were cooking lunch together. She stood beside him, attempting to chop vegetables with a knife, but her grip was too tight and the knife wobbled awkwardly in her hands. Ethan noticed her struggle and quickly stepped in to help. "It's okay," he said, gently taking the knife from her. "You don't have to press so hard. Let the knife do the work." Arya watched intently as he sliced the carrots with ease. She tried again, but this time her hand shook a little. She wasn't afraid of the knife, but the motion was unfamiliar. After a few tries, she sighed, looking frustrated. "I can't do it right." Ethan put down his knife and turned to her. "You know, nobody gets everything perfect right away. It's okay to struggle. You're learning." She blinked, processing the word slowly. Learning," she repeated quietly. Then she looked at him with a small, uncertain smile. "I try again?" "Of course," Ethan said with a grin. "Take your time." She nodded, then tried again. The next time, her movements were much smoother, and she cut the carrots with confidence. "I did it," she said, smiling proudly. "You did. I knew you could do it," Ethan said, pleased with her progress. But Arya's journey wasn't just about learning physical tasks. She also had to learn how to understand human emotions, which was perhaps the hardest part. There were moments when she couldn't tell when someone was happy, sad, or angry. She didn't understand sarcasm, jokes, or simple gestures like a smile or a frown. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Ethan was reading a book when Arya suddenly asked, "Ethan, why do you make sad face sometimes?" Ethan looked up, surprised. "Sad face when?" "Sometimes your face. Look not happy," she said, trying to explain. "Like, when you think." Ethan put the book down and thought for a moment. I see. Sometimes I get lost in my thoughts. I think about work, about the future. But it doesn't mean I'm sad." Arya tilted her head, trying to understand. "So, your face says one thing, but your heart says another?" Ethan smiled gently, impressed by her insight. "Exactly. It's a little complicated, I guess. Sometimes my face says things I don't even mean." Arya nodded slowly, her fox ears twitching as if she were processing this new information. "I see, I try to understand." Ethan smiled, touched by her effort. "You're doing great, Arya." Arya's learning didn't stop with human habits or emotions. As the weeks passed, she started to learn about relationships too. She observed how Ethan treated her, how he cared for her, and how they communicated without always using words. The bond between them deepened with every day that passed. And it wasn't just about teaching or helping anymore. It was about understanding each other. One afternoon, as they sat outside in the garden, Arya asked something that made Ethan pause. "Do humans love?" Ethan looked at her, surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" "Love, like how you take care of me." She seemed confused, trying to understand this idea. Ethan thought for a moment. "Yeah, I guess so. Love is about caring for someone, making sure they're okay. It's not just about words, it's about actions too." Arya thought about this, her tail flicking back and forth. "So, you love me?" Ethan looked at her, his heart softening. "Yes, I care about you, Arya. You're important to me." Arya smiled, a warm, bright smile. I care about you too, Ethan." For the first time, Arya understood something deeply human. That love wasn't just a feeling or an idea. It was something you showed through your actions, through kindness and understanding. Life had settled into a peaceful routine for Ethan and Arya. Days passed with simple joys. Ethan teaching Arya new things, Arya becoming more comfortable with her human-like emotions, and both of them enjoying each other's company. It was a quiet life, but it was enough. Yet beneath this calm surface, something remained unspoken, something that neither of them fully understood. It all started one cool evening when Arya found something that disturbed her peace. She had been out in the garden tending to the plants when she noticed something shining beneath a pile of fallen leaves. Her curiosity piqued. She reached down and uncovered a small, glimmering object. It was a pendant, a beautiful silver piece shaped like a fox's head. The eyes were small jewels, and there was a faint glow coming from within. Arya's breath caught in her throat when she saw it. Her hands trembled as she picked it up, staring at it in awe and fear. For some reason, she felt a connection to it, as though it belonged to her, or maybe it was a piece of a memory that had been lost. She clutched it tightly in her hand, her heart beating faster. She rushed inside, holding the pendant close to her chest. Ethan was sitting at the table reading a book. When he saw her face, his smile faded. There was something in her eyes, something unsettling. "Arya?" he asked gently. "What's wrong?" Arya didn't speak at first. She was still staring at the pendant. I found this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's familiar, but I don't understand." Ethan stood up and walked over to her. "Let me see it." Arya handed it to him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. The moment Ethan held the pendant, he felt something odd, almost like a cold shiver ran through him. There was a strange energy in it, something ancient yet familiar. "Where did you find this?" he asked softly, noticing the faint blue glow coming from the pendant. Arya bit her lip, her tail twitching nervously. "In the garden. It's mine, isn't it?" Ethan looked down at the pendant, studying the delicate fox shape. "I don't know. It's beautiful, but I don't think I've ever seen anything like it." Arya's eyes filled with tears. "I remember something. I remember running, and then darkness. I was lost. I don't know where I came from." Ethan's heart ached as he looked at her. He had always known there was more to Arya than met the eye. Her fox ears, her tail, her unusual mannerisms. None of it made sense. But this pendant? This was a clue, something that could lead them to answers. "I think we need to find out where this came from," Ethan said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "You don't have to do this alone. We'll figure it out together." Arya nodded slowly, wiping away a tear. "Together," she whispered, feeling a small sense of comfort in his words. The next day, Ethan and Arya decided to visit the nearby town of Briarwood, a small village where people lived in harmony with the forest. It wasn't far from Elysia, but it was the kind of place where old legends and ancient stories were still passed down from generation to generation. If anyone had knowledge about mystical objects or forgotten histories, it would be in Briarwood. As they walked along the dirt path leading into the town, Arya was still unsure. Her eyes darted around, her fox ears twitching at every sound. She wasn't used to being in public places, especially not in a town full of humans. The people stared at her, their eyes wide with curiosity and fear. She felt their gazes on her like sharp needles, making her uncomfortable. Ethan could see the tension in her body. "It's okay," he said quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "They won't hurt you." Arya nodded, but she still kept close to him, her tail tucked behind her. Ethan led her through the town, stopping at the small bookshop near the center square. The shop was old, with dusty windows and a sign that read, "The Eldritch Tome." Inside, the air smelled of old paper and wood, and rows upon rows of books filled the shelves. The elderly woman behind the counter looked up as they entered. She was short and bent with age, but her eyes were sharp and her smile warm. "Can I help you, young man?" she asked. Ethan nodded, his gaze shifting to Arya, who was standing just behind him, her eyes wide with wonder. "Yes, actually," he said. "We're looking for information on something unusual." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Unusual, you say? What kind of unusual?" Ethan glanced at Arya, who hesitated for a moment before speaking. "A pendant. A silver fox." The woman's eyes widened slightly, her smile fading. She stepped closer to them, her wrinkled hands reaching out to touch the pendant. "That is a very old piece," she said softly, almost to herself. "Where did you find it?" Arya looked at the woman with fear in her eyes. I don't know. It's mine. I think it's mine." The woman nodded slowly, her fingers tracing the pendant's edges. This pendant is tied to a very old legend. It belongs to the folk of the forest, a lost race of beings that were once guardians of the land. They were part human, part spirit, part fox. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Arya had always seemed different, but this was more than he expected. A lost race? Guardians of the land? Guardians? Ethan repeated, trying to absorb the information. What happened to them? The woman sighed, her face darkening. They disappeared many years ago, hidden away in the deepest parts of the forest. Some say they vanished because of human greed. Others say it was because of a curse, but their legacy lives on. That pendant, it marks the wearer's bloodline. It is a symbol of protection, of an ancient bond between the fox spirits and the humans. Arya looked down at the pendant in her hand, her fingers tracing the smooth surface. But why do I have it? She whispered, her voice full of confusion and fear. Why don't I remember? The woman looked at Arya with understanding. You were likely born of that line, child. The folk of the forest had the ability to shapeshift, to live among humans without revealing their true forms. But something must have happened. Perhaps you were separated from your people, or maybe you were sent into hiding for protection. Ethan's heart sank. Arya wasn't just some lost girl from the woods. She was part of something much older, something mystical and powerful. But why me? Arya asked, looking at Ethan. Why did I forget? Why don't I remember anything? The old woman's eyes softened. The memories of the folk are often locked away, especially when they are young. Your mind was probably shielded to protect you from something dangerous. But now that you are safe, the memories may return. Ethan placed a hand on Arya's arm. We'll figure it out, he said. We'll help you remember. For the rest of the day, they walked through Briarwood, gathering more information. But the more they learned, the more questions they had. Arya was clearly linked to this mysterious, almost magical heritage. But the answers were hidden, locked away like forgotten secrets. As night fell, they made their way back to Elysia, Arya lost in thought. She clutched the pendant tightly in her hand, her tail still and her expression distant. Are you okay? Ethan asked as they walked through the darkening woods. You seem quiet. Arya didn't answer immediately. She just stared at the pendant, her amber eyes filled with a mix of fear and wonder. I don't know who I am, she whispered finally, her voice barely audible. But I know I'm not. Just a human. Ethan stopped and turned to her. Arya, you're more than just a human. You're part of something special, and whatever your past is, we'll face it together. I promise. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. Together, she repeated, her voice soft but full of warmth. And in that moment, Ethan realized that it didn't matter who she was or where she came from. What mattered was that Arya was his friend, and he would help her find the answers she needed. After their visit to Briarwood, Arya's life began to change in ways she couldn't fully understand. Every night she lay awake staring at the ceiling of her small room in Ethan's house. The pendant was always close by, nestled beneath her pillow. She could feel its pull, its weight, and its strange warmth like a forgotten piece of her soul. Every day she tried harder to remember. But the memories wouldn't come. They were like shadows just out of reach, slipping away every time she thought she was close. She remembered bits and pieces of the past, flashes of faces, of places, of sounds that no longer made sense. But nothing was whole. It was like her past had been locked away, hidden from her by some unseen force. Ethan noticed the change in her. At first she had been curious, excited even, about learning human customs. But now she was more distant, lost in thought, as though she were trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. One evening, while they sat outside in the garden, Arya spoke up, her voice soft and uncertain. Ethan, I don't understand. Why can't I remember more? Why is my past so hidden? Ethan looked up at the sky where the first stars were starting to twinkle. The night was cool and the scent of pine filled the air. He had been wondering the same thing. But he didn't know the answer. All he knew was that he couldn't give up on her. She deserved to know who she was. I don't have all the answers, he said quietly, but I do know that you're not alone. I'll help you find out everything you can, together. Arya's amber eyes met his, and for the first time in days she smiled, a small, grateful smile that seemed to lighten the burden on her heart. Together, she repeated, her tail flicking gently behind her. The next day, Ethan decided to take a different approach. If Arya's memories were locked away, maybe they could find a way to unlock them. He remembered the old woman in Briarwood, the one who had mentioned the pendant's connection to the folk of the forest. Perhaps there were other places to explore, other people who knew more about the ancient beings Arya was connected to. He suggested they visit an old shrine in the forest. It was a place known to the people of Elysia, a place of quiet reverence and forgotten stories. Some said it was once a sacred site for the original guardians of the land, the very same guardians who had disappeared long ago. The shrine was hidden deep in the woods where the trees grew tall and the air was thick with the scent of earth and leaves. Arya agreed to the idea, though she felt nervous. The deeper they went into the forest, the more she felt something stirring inside her. It was as though the trees were whispering to her, calling her home. But she couldn't understand the whispers. The memories were too far away. As they reached the shrine, the air grew heavier, and the shadows of the trees stretched long across the ground. The shrine itself was old, covered in moss and vines, with a stone statue of a fox-like creature standing in the center. The creature's eyes were large and unblinking, its expression one of quiet strength. Arya felt a strange shiver run down her spine as she approached the statue. She could feel the power emanating from it, ancient and deep like the very earth itself. The pendant in her hand began to glow faintly, as though it recognized the place. Ethan stood back, watching her closely. "Are you okay?" he asked. Arya didn't answer at first. She just stared at the statue, her face a mixture of awe and fear. Then she spoke softly, as if to herself. "This place, I've been here before." Her voice trembled with the weight of the words, and Ethan's heart tightened. Could this be the key? Had the shrine triggered something inside her? Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. It was a soft whisper like the wind through the trees. It was so faint that at first Ethan thought it was his imagination. But then Arya turned toward him, her eyes wide with shock. "Did you hear that?" she asked urgently. Ethan frowned, scanning the forest. "Hear what?" Arya shook her head, her tail twitching nervously. It was a voice. A whisper. It said something. Ethan's pulse quickened. Was this it? Was this the moment when Arya would finally remember something? He stepped closer to her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "Arya, focus," he said gently. What did the voice say? Arya closed her eyes, trying to concentrate. Her fingers tightened around the pendant and she muttered, It said, "You are one of us. The bloodline calls to you, remember. Remember who you are." Ethan's heart raced. The voice was no longer a whisper. It was clear now, echoing in his mind. The bloodline. The guardians. Could this be the key to unlocking Arya's past? "Arya," he said, his voice full of hope. "This is it. You're starting to remember." But Arya was shaking her head, her body trembling with fear. "I don't understand," she said, her voice cracking. "Who am I? Why can't I remember anything? Why is it so hard?" Ethan took a deep breath, his mind racing. "Maybe it's not something you're supposed to remember all at once. Maybe you need time. The memories might come back in pieces, like a puzzle you have to put together." Arya's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to forget anymore," she whispered. "I want to know who I really am. I want to understand." Ethan stepped closer, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "I'm here. We'll figure it out. You're not alone." For a long moment they stood there, surrounded by the stillness of the forest. The pendant in Arya's hand glowed softly, its light flickering like a heartbeat. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Arya struggled to piece together the fragments of her past, but the more she tried, the more confused she became. Her mind was a maze of images, emotions, and strange sensations. Sometimes she would hear the whisper again, the voice telling her to remember, but each time the memory was just out of reach. Ethan didn't give up. He continued to support her, patiently helping her explore the parts of the forest that felt familiar, trying to unlock more clues. He never pressured her, never pushed her to remember faster. He knew that Arya needed time to understand what had been hidden from her for so long. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Arya spoke again, her voice soft and distant. "I think I'm starting to remember something. Something about the forest," she said, her eyes flickering with the spark of a new realization. "I remember, running from something." Ethan leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "Running from what?" Arya shook her head. "I don't know. But I remember fear. I remember being chased." Ethan's heart sank. Could it be that Arya had been in danger? Had she been forced to hide, to forget in order to survive? Do you remember who was chasing you? He asked gently. Arya closed her eyes, trying to dig deeper. No, I can't see their faces. But I remember the darkness. And I remember the pendant. Someone told me to keep it safe. Someone told me to hide. Ethan felt a chill run through him. The more Arya remembered, the more dangerous it seemed. She wasn't just some lost girl in the woods. She was part of something much bigger. A legacy tied to the ancient guardians. And someone or something didn't want her to remember. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You're safe now. No one will hurt you here. And we'll figure this out. Together. Arya nodded slowly, a flicker of hope in her eyes. Together. The next day, as Arya and Ethan prepared to leave the forest shrine, Arya glanced back at the statue of the fox-like creature. It seemed to watch her, its unblinking eyes filled with silent wisdom. I'll remember, she whispered to herself, her voice steady with resolve. I'll remember who I am. Ethan smiled, his heart full of hope. Whatever dangers awaited them, whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew one thing for sure. He would be by her side every step of the way. The days after their visit to the shrine felt different. Arya no longer wandered through the house in confusion. The pieces of her past were starting to come together, like small scattered fragments that she was slowly collecting. But with each piece that clicked into place, there was still so much she didn't understand. The truth seemed just beyond her grasp. Ethan had seen the change in her. There was a new light in her eyes now, a determination to uncover the secrets of her past. But there was also a shadow of fear that clung to her, as though the closer she got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. It was on a cool morning when Arya said the words that sent a chill through Ethan's heart. I remember. Something about the darkness, she whispered, her voice trembling. The fear. And someone chasing me. I can feel it in my bones. Ethan, who had been sitting on the porch looking out at the forest, turned to her. His heart sank, but he kept his voice steady. What do you mean, Arya? Who was chasing you? Arya shook her head slowly. I don't know. I can't see their faces. But I remember the fear. I remember running through the trees. And then I was alone. I was lost. Ethan stood up, his brow furrowing. The more Arya remembered, the more it sounded like she had been running from something terrible. Something that didn't want her to survive. Arya, whatever happened, you're safe now. No one is going to hurt you. Arya nodded, but her expression was distant. I'm not sure. I feel like I'm still being hunted. Even now. Ethan walked over to her, placing his hands on her shoulders gently. Listen to me. You don't have to worry about that anymore. We're going to find the answers together. But we need to keep moving forward. You can't let the past control you. Arya looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and fear. I want to understand, Ethan. I want to know who I really am. I want to remember everything. Ethan's heart ached for her. He wanted to give her the answers she needed, but he didn't have them either. They had only just begun to uncover the truth, and there was still so much more to learn. That afternoon, they made their way back to the forest. This time, their destination was the ancient ruins deep within the woods. The old woman in Briarwood had mentioned them, hinting that the ruins might hold the final key to unlocking Arya's memories. The place was ancient, even older than the shrine they had visited before. It was said to be the site where the folk of the forest had once gathered, their rituals and powers hidden away from the human world. As they walked through the dense trees, Arya's steps grew slower. She seemed to be drawn to the place like a magnet pulling her towards something she couldn't fully comprehend. The pendant in her hand pulsed softly, as though reacting to the energy in the air. I feel something, Arya said, her voice barely a whisper. I think we're close. Ethan glanced at her, noticing the way she held the pendant tightly. What do you feel? Arya paused for a moment, her eyes closed as if listening to the wind. It's like a call, a pull. It's coming from the ruins. They continued on, their journey taking them deeper into the forest. The air grew cooler and the shadows seemed darker as they approached the ruins. The trees began to part, revealing a large stone archway, crumbled and overgrown with vines. Beyond it, the ruins stretched out, remnants of an ancient temple or gathering place, long abandoned but still full of power. Arya stepped forward, her footsteps slow and cautious. She reached out to touch the stone archway, her fingers brushing against the weathered surface. The moment she made contact, the pendant in her hand began to glow brightly, its light growing stronger with each passing second. "Ethan, I think this is it," she said, her voice trembling with both excitement and fear. "This is where it all began." Ethan stood behind her, watching her closely. He could feel the energy in the air now, and it was like the forest itself was alive, vibrating with ancient power. "What do you think happened here?" he asked, his voice filled with awe. Arya turned to him, her face serious. "I think this is where I was born. This is where my people lived. But something happened. Something went wrong." They stepped through the archway and into the ruins. The air inside was heavy, thick with history. The walls were etched with symbols, worn by time but still visible. In the center of the ruins, a large stone altar stood covered in moss and ivy. It looked ancient, but its surface was unmarred, as if it had been untouched for centuries. Arya walked slowly toward the altar, her eyes scanning the symbols on the walls. She reached out and traced her fingers along one of them, her touch light but reverent. This is where the folk of the forest performed their rituals," she said softly. "This is where they connected with the spirits of the land." Ethan joined her at the altar, looking down at the worn stone. "Do you think this is where you were made?" Arya nodded slowly. "I don't know, but I feel like it's where everything started. It's where my past is buried." They stood in silence for a few moments, the only sound the whisper of the wind through the trees. Then, without warning, Arya gasped. "Ethan, look," she said, pointing to a set of markings on the altar. They were faint, barely visible, but as Arya reached out to touch them, the symbols seemed to come alive, glowing with a soft blue light. Ethan stepped back, his eyes wide with shock. "What is happening?" Arya's hand trembled as she traced the markings. I think this is a message. A warning." Suddenly, the pendant in her hand began to glow brighter, and the ground beneath them rumbled. The air shifted, and a deep, echoing voice filled the ruins. "You are the last of us," the voice said, its tone both ancient and mournful. "The folk of the forest have been lost for centuries. The bloodline must be protected." Arya's eyes widened in shock. Who are you?" she cried. "I am the voice of the past," the voice replied. "I am the spirit of the guardian. The bloodline you carry is one of power and responsibility. You are the key to the future, but you must be careful. The darkness that chased you is still close. The enemy that destroyed us is not gone. They will come for you." Ethan's heart raced. Who's coming for her? What do we need to do? The voice grew fainter, its words almost lost in the wind. "You must unlock the full power of the pendant. The folk of the forest were protectors, guardians of the land. You are one of us, Arya. You must remember." And then, as quickly as it had come, the voice vanished, leaving only an eerie silence in its wake. Arya stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock. I don't understand. What did it mean? What power?" Ethan stepped closer to her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I don't know, Arya. But whatever it is, we'll figure it out. Together." Arya looked down at the pendant in her hand, its glow fading. "I can't do this alone, Ethan," she whispered. "I need to remember everything. I need to know who I am." "You don't have to do it alone," Ethan said firmly. "I'll be with you every step of the way. Whatever the future holds, we'll face it together." Arya looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and determination. "Together," she said softly.